Hit it.
And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grant Houses in Harlem, USA at 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. This program, the Wisdom Table, does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, needs, or any other proclivities of the management of this NYCHA development. Neither do the views expressed here reflect anything on the resident council. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program who are live and live in color in studio sometimes, but always by Zoom. I'm Brother Leroy, co-hosting with the Wisdom Table participants of Sister Shirley, Sister Jenkins, Sister Eva, Sister Esther, Charlene, and others. And this is a workshop of senior women getting them in the position to have their own program. It's the only program or workshop of its type in the USA, probably in the world. Our guest today is a young man who we have known for quite a while. He is very, very versed in this particular field, and that is the area of music coming over Black radio. And specifically, we have asked him to give us insight on how hip hop was co opted into gangster rap. Our guest is Brother Bob Lloyd. Thank you for joining us, brother.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Glad to be
And
doing a show with you with this new technology called Zoom.
you know, that's the I think that was the Cadillac Zoom with
Yeah.
the string hearts. I think that was them. Great group of brothers. And the issue with the present generation and even our generation, we don't know how the music transitioned from the Sugar Hill Gang to gangster rap. And in the Sugar Hill Gang story is a story of independent record shops owned by Black folks and independent distributors. So I'd like for you to incorporate that in your response to how the record industry co-opted hip hop into gangster rap.
Well, the record industry is the major platform that is used to develop and promote a set of values and ideas that, in this case, are very detrimental to the Black community. It was not just the record industry. The record industry is the platform, but there's always been, through media and on every other platform, through education, through classrooms, on every other platform, there has always been an attempt to dehumanize, to denigrate Black folk, to demonize Black folk. And music has always been a powerful instrument historically. Music coming out of the Black cultural experience in the world. Music has been a powerful motivating force. It always has been, all music. And so the decision to use music was made based simply on the fact of how powerful music is. Now, with the record industry being able to point the music in any direction they wanted to, the people who own and control the record industry had a strategy for how to dismantle the Black music industry. See, there used to be a Black music industry that you alluded to. When you talk about independent distributors, those independent distributors existed around the country. Eddie Three-Way in New Orleans, Ted Hudson in St. Louis, uh, Danny Sims in Chicago. I don't know all of them. They were independent distributors. There were independent concert promoters. There were people who owned venues. There were the 20 Grand in Detroit. There were places where artists could perform. There were standalone independent Black music radio stations. And those radio stations were at the heartbeat of the Black entertainment industry. But even the people in the industry, many of them didn't understand how significant radio was to the entire Black independent industry. So in order for the record industry to be able to call the shots and to decide what music gets promoted and set the criteria for the music, they first had to have a plan to dismantle the Black music industry. And they commissioned, people say Clive Davis commissioned, I believe Clive Davis says he didn't do it, but somebody commissioned Harvard Business School to come up with what has been called the Harvard Report. And its official name, when it was delivered to CBS Records or to Clive Davis, was a study of the rhythm and blues environment. Now, first they said that people said there was no Harvard Report. The Harvard Report talked about how the major record companies could systematically take over the Black music industry. First, they said there was no Harvard Report. Then in a fight for control with our brother Al Bell at Stax Records, he was fighting with Columbia Records. And in that fight, he subpoenaed their materials. And in the materials that they delivered was the Harvard Report. That's how we found out about the Harvard Report. Still, people said it didn't exist. Well, Dr. Logan Westbrook, who was a respected record executive back in the day, he has done the book about the Harvard Report. And he says Dr. Logan Westbrook presents the complete Harvard Report. Now, Logan is saying he's going to leave it up to the reader to determine if this study was used to dismantle the Black music industry. He's a record executive. He was at Columbia Records at the time. He says that as far as he is concerned, that wasn't the case. It was just a report on how to conduct business more efficiently and leave it up to the reader. If you're familiar with the record industry, familiar with business tactics, techniques, strategies, this is clearly a strategy which dismantled the Black independent record and entertainment industry and left all of the control in the hands of the major 2 or 3 white record companies, so that Philly International doesn't exist, Stax Records doesn't exist, the powerhouse record companies. Motown was not the only successful Black-owned record company, nor was it the first. First successful Black-owned record company was called Renee Records, and it was owned by the Renee brothers out in Los Angeles, California. I believe they were in Los Angeles. I know they were in California. But Stax Records, extremely successful in getting into the film industry with the first film that they did called the Watts Stax Festival. They put on a major concert in Watts back in the day. They had everybody on their label. They had singers to speakers. They had Richard Pryor, Jesse Jackson, Isaac Hayes, everybody, staple singers, all at the same time. Otis Redding, they were a powerhouse. And then of course, Philly International, they were a powerhouse. They were producing hit after hit after hit. They were extremely successful. There was a whole network. There were independently owned Black radio stations that could play your record. Each radio station had a program director. You could approach the program director with your record and convince the program director to play your record if some other station would not. And if you could get your record played on WWRL in New York.
CR, Grant House's Community Radio, the soul of the Upper West Side.
Okay, sorry for that. That was station ID. Continue, Bob.
I'm aware of station IDs. If WBLS is Powerhouse FM, and if they're not playing your record, WWRL, Powerhouse AM, legacy station, still has real influence in the marketplace, still had the most influential disc jockeys in the city on the air at WWRL as BLS was ascending and number one. But to say BLS wouldn't play your record, if you could get the program director, WWRL, to go on your record, if the fact that it was being played on RL would force BLS on the record. That's how radio works.
Right.
So having independent radio stations, separate independent program directors, was really all helpful in contributing to the vitality as well as the possibilities for music on radio. But radio was key. Once you get rid of all of that, which is what has happened. You know, the Harvard report talked about hiring all of the major companies should hire all of the best people to make sure that the little small independent Black companies didn't have talent to draw on. We used to look at the trade publications, Record World and people, and see that that's another station ID.
Great.
We would look at, see if I can turn this off. Now the thing won't go off. You know, we would look at the trade publications and see how Black people were being hired
Right.
by record companies, being promoted, being shifted over. There's a handful of brothers that were just flying. Their careers were soaring. And we knew some of them and said, wow, surprised that they are moving up so quickly. So many people are being hired. Didn't know that the Harvard report had already said, hire everybody, pay them salaries, hire them, keep them away from the independent record companies so that the independent record companies could not be nearly as competitive. Now, that could be characterized as just hard-nosed business, but they didn't do that to country western. They weren't hiring people away from independent country western labels, you know, or pop music. You know, it was the whole strategy for owning and controlling the music was directed at Black music. And that's why the report that was developed by Harvard Business School was called the Study of the Rhythm and Blues Environment, not just the music, but the whole environment. They wanted to understand how it was working, what made it work, what role did the independent record stores play, what role did the concert promoters play, what role did the independent record promoters play. You know, record promoters, they were independent record promoters. A record promoter is someone who takes your record to radio stations around the country and convinces you to play the record. And record promoters develop their own personal relationship with program directors and music directors around the country. So a record came out that was 9 minutes long. And at a time when people were only playing, the radio version of a song was generally 3 minutes. Didn't go much beyond that, might go a few seconds beyond that, but it was 3 minutes. That was the norm. A record came out that was 9 minutes long. The record promoters who took that record around to the radio stations, they said to program directors, I know it's 9 minutes and it's taking up space on your playlist, but do it for Al. This was the brother who owns Stax Record. All of a sudden, I've just mentioned him, just forgot his last name. Al Bell. They said, do it for Al. This is Al, and we loved Al Bell. Do it for Al. This is his record. He's got an experiment he's trying. He wants to do this. I know it's 9 minutes long, but play it for Al. Help him get this out. And do it for me. I'm the record promoter. I'm your man. You know, I look out for you. I bring you music that works with your format. Do this for me. They never mentioned the artist's name because they had a personal relationship. You didn't play it for the artist. You played it for the record promoter based on his personal relationship, and you played it for Al Bell because of how many of us who were programming at the time or programming then felt about Al Bell. The record went on to be a monster hit that launched the career of Isaac Hayes. By the time I get to Phoenix, was 9 minutes long. It happened because of the intimacy of the record industry and the people and the relationship they had with radio. So understanding the total environment meant you've got to get rid of that intimacy. You've got to get rid of that. You've got to encourage people to hire a program director and let that program director program all your stations in every city. One person sit up in one city And you own, if you own 8 stations, if you own 10, 20 stations, let that one person program all those stations. That'll help eliminate that kind of intimacy that the independent promoters would have, and the relationship that they had. So it was first to take over the record industry, then the record industry decides that we can now implement this strategy that is going to dehumanize Black people, particularly Black youth. And we're going to start to play music, record music, promote music that calls for gang rape, calls for murders and killings, calls for disrespecting families. You know, they've got lyrics that say things that I'm going to go up in your house and shoot everybody in the house, and you know, we're going to snatch your girl off the street. She's going to have to go down on the whole gang. Uh, they romanticize drive-by shootings and how that's popular and appropriate behavior. Uh, you know, so and when hip hop started, hip hop had more venues. See, you could get a record by a hip hop group like Public Enemy, and there might be a radio station that would refuse to play it. But at the same time, there would be other radio stations that would be willing to play it. The record industry had to eliminate those stations so that the only stations that exist are stations that buy into denigrating values and music. Gary Bird, who's like maybe one of the first people to have a hip hop, a rap record. He recorded Every Brother Ain't a Brother on RCA Records, and it was conceived and marketed by an independent record promoter named Buddy Scott. That's how it got on the air in the first place. And so Bird is an accomplished performer, rapper. He did a song called The Crown. And in The Crown, it talked about you wear the crown, we wear the crown. Talked about African history, how Black is beautiful. One of the first Black Lives Matter anthems was Bird's doing The Crown. And when he was now taking it to radio stations, and there's one program director programming 9, 10 radio stations, the brother who was taking it around called them one day and said, I can't get anybody to play it. And they say the reason they won't play it is because it's too Black. And so the values had been re-established by a record industry with Black people working in the record industry and Black people working at the radio stations who defend that policy. And so, yes, the record industry then, I'm told there was a meeting in Los Angeles. Some people said that they wouldn't go along with it once they came out of the meeting, but you're never supposed to mention this meeting, where they said, we are going to, and it was a few years later that a guy who attended the meeting made it public and said that they talked about how they can start to destroy the values in the Black community using a certain kind of music to do so. And that's what so they made that transition from hip hop to gangster rap and began to promote and romanticize gangster rap. And they began to say that that is the voice. Do it, listen to it, accept it, tolerate it, because that is the voice of this generation. When in fact, it was the voice of a small segment of this generation. And there were people who were performing it who had not yet found their voice. You know, hip hop is not the only thing that comes out of the Black cultural experience in the world. There's music coming from South Africa. There's music coming from all over the world. There's music coming from America. There's music coming that is powerful, that is nourishing, that is life-sustaining, but they can't get any airplay because of the radio stations, many of whom are owned by Blacks. There's one Black person who owns, I think Kathy Hughes, I don't know how many, she owns a number of radio stations. There are other people. There are very few Black-owned stations left anymore. It's a whole other story about that in the ad industry and how they refuse to spend money in media that is Black-owned. And as
Bob, let me um, interject here.
certainly.
To go back and put hip hop into context, the time that hip hop came up, and correct me if I'm off. The when you look at it, the '60s coming into the '70s was a black conscious period. So here are the brothers coming up with positive lyrics coming out of the respect yourself environment of the prior generation. And that 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 context, that time context is the incubator. That's where I'm going. The incubator for positive hip hop, whether it was fun hip hop or whether it was message hip hop. And that was a continuation of the black liberation struggle. That's my take. And that is something that the enemy would develop a program to nullify or to to neutralize. At the same time, the brother Robinson, who owned the record, the label that Sugar Hill Gang was on,
Hmm.
um, that was part of it. That was part of it. That record enabled a lot of distributors and black record shops to make even more money, and that was a circumvention of the distribution line of the major record companies. I'm going only from what I understand from having been a part of presentations, but not making them myself.
Hmm.
So fill us in uh, on correcting whatever what I said or embellishing on it.
Well, I don't. It doesn't need to be filled in or embellished. You stated it. Um, well, see, there's so many layers. I don't want people to be too confused about what we're trying to clarify here. Uh, Joe Robinson had a independent record label company, but it was his company. You know, it wasn't just a label deal. A label deal is when the major company says you can have a record company, we'll give you a label. You can call it Def Jam. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And you can set up an office someplace away from me. I don't want to be bothered with y'all in the first place, but I will give you the budget to make the music, and you have
Mm.
to deliver hit records back to me, and I will distribute the records for you. And you get your percentage of the sales. So getting your percentage, you could make a lot of money, but you didn't own the company and you didn't own and control the distribution. Joe Robinson and others owned the company. So he had a group called the Moments. That was one of the groups that he had success with. They went on to become Ray Goodwin and Brown. The uh, but he was able to get his records played, and he was also responsible for the distribution. That's what would keep him alive. So he didn't have to compromise on anything. He could put out a record that he wanted to put out. He, his wife was Sylvia, you know, and people from your generation might remember Sylvia. She was Sylvia who used to sing with Mickey, and she was the Mickey and Sylvia duo. But what was their song? Um,
Love is strange.
Love is strange, and how do you call your baby? And so she, I just said that to make you say the song so people would know that it was from your generation. but,
Indeed.
but,
Good.
but they were able to launch hip hop. Sylvia saw kids exchanging cassettes. Back in the day, there were cassettes, and they were exchanging cassettes in the schoolyard. They were making raps themselves and recording it easy, talking into the recorder on the little handheld recorder, and they were doing rap. And she said, "What is that? What are y'all doing?" And saw that they were exchanging these raps. And she said, "What is this?" And when she looked at it, and she said, "You know, this could be real. This could be a real business here. This could be real. This could be an industry." And so she, I don't know all of the details that took her to the Sugar Hill Gang, but she formed the Sugar Hill Gang and then created a subsidiary of All Platinum Records, which was her husband's record company, and it was Sugar Hill Records. But the reason that they could survive, the reason they had a chance, is they could take their music to the one-stop distributor, Burdell's Records in Brooklyn, and say, "Here's, would you put this in your store?" And Burdell's would not only put it in his store, but as a one-stop distributor, he would put it in other stores in New York, in Brooklyn, and in Queens, in Harlem. I think the Record Shack was the Record Shack on 125th Street.
Right, right,
I don't know.
definitely.
I don't know if they were distributors, but they were a key uh, outlet. Paul Winley, further down the street on 125th Street, I believe he might have been a distributor. But you could take your records to those various independents and get your record placed in stores, as well as get your record played on stations around the country. But you didn't get the record played on every station at the same time. Now you might remember when we were growing up, you would hear a song in another city. People would come up to visit from the South, which we now understand were smaller markets. We didn't know anything about a smaller or a major market then, but they're coming from smaller markets. They're coming from Hampton, Virginia, you know, and they would say that they know there's a song by so and so, and you haven't heard that song. We never heard it yet, or we're playing it now, and they say, "Oh, that's old. I listened to that 4 weeks ago." That's because in those days, the independent company could not afford to even press enough records and to distribute them nationally all at one time. So they had to do it market by market. They'd get it played in a smaller market in Hampton, Virginia. They would make some money. It's a hit record. They bring it back up to Philadelphia and say, "This is a hit record." It was in the number 3 or number 1 in Hampton. Philadelphia says, "Okay, I'll play it." So it's now being played on WDAS in Philadelphia. And it's now we can put it in record stores in Philadelphia. We're making some more money. Now we're going to bring it to Washington, D.C. And same story. Now we're going to bring it to New York City. It's going to be in a major market. It's going to be a monster hit or a major hit. The artist is going to start working, all of that falls into place. But it was that kind of a step-by-step process. Now I'm laying that out because what the record industry did was they would go to the artists and they could say, "We know that you are a hit maker. We will record you. And rather than you have to wait all year to get your money from your million-selling record, we will give you a cash advance up front. And we will get your record distributed nationally all at one time. So we want to take over the distribution. And in order for the independent little Black company to remain competitive and hold on to the artists, they would have to agree, once they produce the record, to let the major company distribute the record, take the distribution away from them. When they take the distribution away from them, they also took it away from the one-stop distributors. They also took it away from the independent record promoters, right? And so that cash advance was used as a tool. Now it could be said that that's just business, but it was really used as a tool to dismantle components of the record industry, of the whole radio record entertainment industry. So it was those kind of things that they did to make the independent Black entertainment industry more vulnerable to their takeover.
Go into this is adjacent to the hip hop piece. Go into how they began to siphon off talent from Philly International.
Well, a lot of people at Philly International were very loyal to Kenny and Leon, just as the people at Stax Records were very loyal to Al Bell. It's not so much that they were able to siphon off, they were able to shut down the record company so that the artists didn't have any option. See, they approached Isaac Hayes and they said, "Leave Stax." We'll distribute your records nationally. It'll be all over the country in a couple of days, and we'll get you airplay on radio stations all over the country, and we'll give you a cash advance. And Isaac said no, staying with Al Bell at Stax Records. That's when they began to wage war on the record company. That's when they would see the record company now, in order to get distribution, they had already entered into an agreement with the major label to distribute their record. Now they find out that Al Bell would say that he would found out that his records were not being distributed. They were telling him, you have a turntable hit, real popular. People are calling radio stations asking for the record. They love the record, but nobody's buying it. You know, so the money you spent pressing it, the money that we gave you to develop it, now you owe us. You got to pay us back because the record is not selling. And he found that the records were being stockpiled in warehouses. They weren't putting them in record stores. It takes me all the way back to when Max Roach, I believe, and Charles Mingus, I believe it was Mingus, tried to start a jazz record label, ran into the same thing. Max and Mingus down on the waterfront with rifles,
Wait a
trying to
minute, say that again.
trying
Wait,
to
say
get,
that.
get their records off the truck or out of the warehouse and on the trucks and distribute their records to the stores. But that's what happened more so than they didn't siphon off the talent like people started to just leave. They were shutting down the record company so that the artists had no choice. And the record company, the black record company, had no choice. That's why Al Bell was fighting with Columbia Records. And that's when we learned about the Harvard report. Al Bell was fighting with them. Philly International was fighting with them. The record industry, those major companies were clearly engaged in a strategy to shut down those record companies and independent record companies and make it difficult for them to even prosper and survive. And that's what happened. So that the artists had to go with
Right.
the major company once their company no longer existed.
Okay, now, Public Enemy, within the realm of our conversation, how the record industry co-opted hip hop into gangster rap. Public Enemy, is that a separate story in itself in terms of they're going after Public Enemy based on what you understand or what you can analyze?
A separate story, separate and apart from what? How they went after everybody else?
Well, Public Enemy, I look at as being in the forefront of within that within a period when a set period of time,
Mm-hmm.
forefront of consciousness and just pumping it out there. You wanted to know the next thing that they had to do,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a group, they had an organization, and what really is in my mind is the song "Do the Right Thing," is the movie "Do the Right Thing," and the fact, not the fact, but what I understand is that the record itself that they let off the movie with did not enter into the realm of platinum or whatever because the product was not distributed. This is what I understand,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was under the label of, Caucasian ownership.
The I don't know about that particular song. I know
It's
this.
it's the one that opens up.
I understand, but I mean, in
Okay,
terms of the dynamic around that, I don't know. I know that songs, in order for a song to be a hit, the record company has to do what they call work it. They've got to make sure it's being played. They've got to visit the radio stations. They've got to take the group around to visit the radio stations. They do things, they give away Public Enemy t-shirts, they give the radio station gifts. I'll take the 16th caller from New Jersey, and if you win this Public Enemy gift pack, You know, they work the record. They have other things that they do. They work the record. They promote it. They arrange for the performers to be interviewed on the talk shows. They arrange for the artists to be interviewed on the music shows. You'll be listening to the music station, and they say, "Our guest in the studio today is Chuck D," and that's how they work the record. They work the record. That is how many of the records become hits, because of the work being done by the record promoters, either the independent or the record promoters who work for the record company. So if they decide not to work a record, they could cause that record to stall. When I was programming music at WWRL, a record promoter brought me a few songs on Music Day. And so I added a song. I added a song by Melba Moore. The guy called me back and said, "I see that you added Melba's song. And I thank you for adding four of my four songs, or three songs. Maybe he brought me four, and I thank you for adding three." But he said, "But that Melba Moore song is not the song that we are working right now. It's not a priority for us. I would rather you took that off and added this other song that you did not add. And because that's the song that we are working. We're not behind that Melba Moore record right now." That's how they work. I said, I will take the record off as your request, but I have to tell Melba first.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
no, don't go do that. No. All right.
Beautiful.
We're going to leave the record on. But other Black music stations in New York City, other people in JR playing music, BLS playing music, they did not play the song. That is how records records don't just take off by themselves. Some of them are very, very good, but you got to work it. You know, a person who one of the finest singers ever is John Lucien. John
Yes.
Lucien never had a #1 record in New York. He had some hits on jazz stations. He had some hits, but I don't remember anybody coming to bring me and working a John Lucien record. You know,
Right.
that's how the industry, and they don't call it music, they call it product. They'll come in
Right.
your office and say, "I've got some new product."
Right.
And that's how they see it. They don't relate to its cultural value or anything. So that in the case of that record with Public Enemy, it is entirely conceivable that the record was ignored by the record company. And now one of the things that the record people that I knew did say was that when a song was in a movie or being used on a commercial, that it did not increase record sales. So they were not impressed with the song, particularly songs being used in commercials.
I I it depends on who's telling me that, because I'm not I'm dealing with the general statement that you relayed about what they say, that it doesn't uh, cause a spike in the sale of the record. A lot of us who are Black get our mental, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. This is a discussion for the audience. We get our mental marching orders from people who don't know anything about the rhythm, the things that move us as a people, whether it's colors or anything else. And they will repeat what their benefactors say without even thought, because they're collecting a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
The the movie Do the Right Thing, when I saw it, I mean, the thing, it's impossible for that record not to have made millions in sales, but it is possible that they didn't distribute it. So I'm not talking about working the record. I'm talking about distributing that bad boy, strangling it because of the message and who was delivering the message.
Hmm.
See, they got to answer that story. I raised the question, but I knew somebody in that particular record company that had, that song was on.
You're tuned in to GHCR, Grant House's Community Radio of the Upper West Side.
And uh, I just segue into this. It's fortunate that you heard about the Harvard report. It's fortunate that that document came out and was subsequently produced. And that individual who went to that meeting in California, I believe, in Hollywood or wherever it was, where he said they were intentional plans to convey negative values to our young people. It's fortunate that he came forth to reveal that. And the point is, Black people in any business, whether it's in government, education, they know what's going on, but they don't say nothing.
Hmm.
They're so doggone afraid while their people go down the tubes. Um, so go back in terms of a summary part, go back and give the key points of how gangster rap subverted hip hop, and it was intentional. It just didn't happen that this artist all of a sudden is a great artist because he's singing this, that, and the other. Share that with us so the audience can see the picture in a concise way.
Well, I don't know how to do it more so than what we've already done. The when you talk about what we've laid out is that if the record company decides not to work the record, see, then that can stall the record. The
Right.
records don't just sell just on their own power, that you can put it out and everybody's going to buy it because it's such a great record. There's so many, particularly back in the day, there was so much great music. There was a lot of music that each record was competing with each other. And so it would take marketing and promoting and what they call working the record in order to get space in the listener's mind. Everybody is competing for the space in your mind. And so if you're listening to music and you're listening to Smokey Robinson and you like that song, you like whatever he is singing, whatever the song, you like that. You also like what Teddy Pendergrass is singing, and you like Teddy Pendergrass. Then you also like Marvin Gaye, and you're listening to all of this really great music, and you like the OJs. Well, you like the OJs. Well, the Temps also have a new record, and the Temps are wonderful. They're the best male vocal group ever. Oh well, I thought it was the Four Tops. The Four Tops are remarkable. So there's all of this music, all of which is excellent. And so you do have to do a certain amount of work in order to get the audience's attention. And now, and so if they choose not to work a record, since there's so many other records competing for your attention, if they choose not to really work it, it will stall the record no matter who recorded it. Right? So just people just need to understand it's not like a psychic phenomena that Smokey Robinson puts out a record and just like that, it is going to be a number one hit. Motown's going to have to do a little bit of work to promote it. You don't have to do a lot to promote Smokey, but it's not that you have to promote Smokey. You got like you got to prove that he's great. You've got to make sure that he remains competitive in the marketplace along with Teddy Pendergrass and Marvin Gaye and everybody else that is even on his own label. You got to make sure that he remains competitive with the Temps and the Four Tops and the Supremes. So you got to work the music to actually make it happen. But what happened is that the radio with the getting rid of all of the independent radio stations, then you have a few people who own all the radio stations. These stations, Clear Channel and iHeartRadio and people like these major companies and Viacom, they own 100 radio stations each. So now they are setting the policy for all of the airplay around the country. And they're making political decisions. They're not making artistic decisions.
Right.
They're not, they don't care about the beat and none of that stuff. You know, I mean, they're giving away awards, and you hear the MC who's a rapper or somebody or a stripper talking about how honorable it was and great it was to work with all of these awesome artists, these incredible artists. No, none of them are awesome and incredible. The radio stations don't consider them awesome or incredible, and that's why we have to play their music. They have a political agenda. They're part of the overall assault on Black people. And so they have a political agenda to continue to degrade and demonize Black people. They have to do, they are trying to manufacture consent so that when a Donald Trump says that we need to send in the National Guard, we need to send in federal agents. First, it is to send in federal agents to attack the protesters. Michelle Obama was right. Y'all leave Trump there, it's going to get worse. And they won't be sending in federal agents to attack protesters. They'll be sending in the National Guard and federal agents to shut down your block, like they are already doing on the street in Chicago where the mayor of Chicago lives. They'll be sending in agents to shut down your block. And when they do that, the incredible, awesome artists who have created a body of literature that they call music, that romanticizes gang rape and murder and killing and denigrates and demonizes, the radio stations will have manufactured consent on your part to allow the National Guard to come in, to allow the federal agents to come in and sweep through the street. We think we need to start picking people up. Look how many people are being killed on a weekly basis in Chicago. And to the point where Trump has a rationale for sending in federal agents into Chicago, not just to deal with the protesters, but to deal with the people in the community. Look at the behavior of the police. Every Black man, every Black person right now is in danger on the streets in this country, everyone. Because the police have been assigned the task to provoke riot, to create disorder and anarchy in the street. And they've learned that you can do that if you shoot an unarmed Black man. If you shoot an unarmed Black man, the response is going to be a protest in the street. As you go out into the street, the agent provocateurs are going to start throwing rocks and setting fire. They're going to create the anarchy that's going on in Wisconsin. It's not really genuine protest of an injustice. That stuff is manufactured. It's manufactured by the behavior of the police and the behavior of the agent provocateurs. But the young people have been inundated with messages that say, kill people, shoot people. If you look at the lyrics, you know, people can Google lyrics and look at the lyrics on these songs. Whatever hip hop song you're listening to right now, Google lyrics and look at the lyrics, see what they're actually saying. And when they talk about things that denigrate women and call for murder and killing, and then when the song comes on, people jump up and start dancing. And I know some sisters who would confront them and they'd say to women, why are you dancing to this song? And the women say, well, I didn't hear the lyric. I'm just dancing to the beat. And I'm not paying attention to the lyric. I just like the beat. But you know, your brain hears the lyrics and your brain processes and retains that information. And so we might be getting off the point, but it is.
No, you're right on it. You're right on it, Bob. The because we got to be aware of the understanding of an audience. When you say their decisions are political, not artistic, what do you mean political? What does that mean? Is that socio-political? What does that mean? Political.
That white supremacy has a political agenda. I was saying that they're not picking these artists because these artists are talented. They are picking these artists because these artists will agree for the money that they are getting at the moment. These artists will agree to promote death and degradation in the Black community. That's a political decision to do that. For
Hmm.
they give away awards. They just had the BET awards, and they gave an award to a rapper called, I believe he's called The Baby, and he was rapping his song, and he was doing it in front of a Black Lives Matter motif. They had pictures in the back with signs saying Black Lives Matter, photos of young people with their fist in the air in front of this Black Lives Matter motif. He's rapping this song. You need to Google the lyrics of The Baby's current song, where he's talking about killing people. Black Lives Matter in the background. He's talking about killing niggas in this
Mm.
lyrics, in his lyric. And see, and the decision to give him the award, look at the other thing that they're doing. When, being a hooker uh, is one of being a prostitute, prostitute, that's one of the most dangerous occupations you could have.
Mm.
It puts you at risk. You're in the street, you're in the back of somebody's car, truck, hotel room, wherever they take them, with a stranger. What kind of a man? What are the principles and values and the cleanliness of a man who's
Mhm.
driving around the street willing to pick up little 17-year-olds, 18-year-old little girls and take them to have sex somewhere? What kind of man does that? So, and these young women are on the street putting themselves at the mercy of these degenerate men. And it's more than one man each night. Don't know. So it is a dangerous job just on a health level. These guys could be diseased. They could be alcoholics. They could be, I don't know about alcoholic being a disease, but they could be, but they could have disease. The
Mhm.
And they could be very dirty. And you've got to go from one man to the next. When do you get a chance to clean your own body and
Mhm.
protect yourself from disease? And so you're out in the street and you don't know who the men are. You don't know their mentality. At the end of the sex act, they may or may not pay you. And if you insist, they might want to knock you out. Like, who do you think you're talking to? It's very dangerous to be with these guys up and down the street, guys in the strip club, girls slide up and down the pole. Look at that. What is that? And the men in the strip clubs playing with these women. Those men in the strip club, if they had a wife, they would not want their wife sliding up and
Mhm.
down the pole in front of all those other men.
Mhm.
In order for them to even look at the women who are doing that, they have to first, in their own mind, dehumanize those women.
Mhm.
But now, but the political agenda says, what they say is that these jobs give these women an opportunity to make money that they could not ordinarily get. These women
Mhm.
have limited options. So this is empowering, gives them a chance to make money. Look at that logic. Rather
Mhm.
than change the conditions that these young women are growing up under, change the conditions. They have limited opportunities. What about increasing their opportunities? What about taking them out of the gutter, increasing their opportunities? What about doing that kind of political work to change their environment and change the condition of the people? But instead, they say we're not going to change the condition of the people, stay in the gutter and we'll change the name. We'll call you, won't be a hoe anymore. You'll be a sex worker.
That's right.
And if you are now a sex worker, now, uh, now you are legitimate. You're still in the same gutter. You're
Right.
still putting your life at risk with the same degenerate men. Those degenerate men in the strip clubs, those degenerate men driving up and down the street, picking up these young girls off the street, the same men trying to hit on you in the clubs who mean you no good whatsoever. But we're not going to change that condition. We're going to leave the condition as it is, leave you in the gutter, and give you a new name. See, that's a political decision, and it works because the people that they are doing it with are so poorly educated politically. They are so apolitical. The strippers and the, you know, the poor thing. The
The, li-
but
the,
those are political decisions. Those are not artistic. They're
right.
not um, going in, they're not hiring these young girls in the strip club because they're such great dancers sliding up and down the pole. There's no talent necessary. A willingness to take off your clothes is all that is necessary.
The one of the points here is that that's the lifestyle that's promoted and reinforced in the lyrics or within the realm of gangster rap. One last thing, and that is your observations of the value to the enemy of Tupac and Biggie being assassinated.
Uh, they, I don't know about Biggie. Um, Tupac was trying, as I understand it, trying to find his voice for real, understanding the influence that he had. He was trying to lift the consciousness, point a direction. He still had work to do. He still had study and investigation to do. Um, and it was a tragedy to lose him since he appeared to be willing, but he needed to spend some time with the Midi Baraka. He needed to spend some time with Gil Scott Heron and any number. He needed to spend some time with Ossie Davis and with Sonia Sanchez. But as I understand, he was willing, I believe. Biggie, I don't know how much he was actually moving toward a new consciousness. See, there are people who were giving up being a gangster, and uh, and then so they are applauded for that. But Scripture says, the Scripture that guided the Million Man March, Scripture says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, turn from their evil ways and seek my face, then they will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. Turn from their evil ways and turn away from evil and pick up and pursue righteousness. Just giving up being a gangster is not the whole story. It's not all there is to it. What has to happen is that you turn away from one thing and begin to pick up righteousness and promote that and work toward that and do that. And but they were killed, particularly Biggie was killed very early on. Uh, so there's no telling what his voice would have been. But there are many others who are still there. And I was listening to a song by Hugh Masekela yesterday. I'm going to use it on my show Saturday, where he said, this is while Mandela was in jail, and he said, "Bring Mandela home. I want to see him walking down the streets of Soweto hand in hand with
Right.
uh,
With Winnie.
with
With
Winnie.
Winnie.
I want to see him walking hand in hand with Winnie." See, the lyrics to those songs were clear. You didn't have to listen 2 or 3 times to get the message. They have artists who are speaking clearly and saying the kind of things that need to be said. And I appreciate those artists even more. I appreciate Sonia Sanchez talking, where say catch the fire, and saying not come out of the shadows, not gangster shadows, say it clearly, and don't hide it and bury it in some other kind of almost coded rhetoric. I appreciate the people who are trying to talk to the masses of our people. And that's what's missing, real music with real messages. I know everybody focuses on hip hop. So you don't talk about Layla, the sister, young sister from South Africa, and her song, Something Inside So Strong. The higher you build your barriers, the taller I will grow. The further you move my rights away, the faster I will run. We don't talk about her. We're talking about Tupac and hip hop artists, and they're not the only artists on the planet now. As I said earlier, there's a lot of really powerful music. Christian McBride just did a CD. Kurt Whalum just did a CD where he traveled around the world, most of it in Africa, recording artists, young artists from those various places, various countries. And the music is nourishing and intelligent. And they did their take on some R&B songs. There's more music being produced than hip hop. And the problem with that is that we are allowing hip hop to be separated from the rest of the Black cultural experience. It shouldn't be hip hop, it should be Black music. And hip hop should be included in the Black music collection. It should not, and what's happening is that it is being pushed aside to stand aside as something separate and apart from the rest of the Black community and from the rest of the Black cultural experience. So you get hip hop artists saying that there's a hip hop culture, and they talk about the 3 or 4 components of the hip hop culture. So you don't separate, your young people should not be separated from their real culture and from the historical legacies inherent in their real culture. Don't let them think that they have a separate culture that includes break dancing and scratching on records and call that culture. When in fact, they have a real culture and a cultural legacy that teaches values and that produces music that nourishes the spirit. And I believe that the real attack on us comes from the enemies of Black people understanding how powerful music really is, how music makes such a difference. We had some of the finest, most talented poets and writers ever, part of the Black arts movement of the 1960s. And we were saying Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. And we said it in all kinds of wonderful ways. Great, great artists, great poets performing. Then the Panther Party the New York Panther Party forced James Brown to do a relevant record because he had just done a song called I'm an American Too, which we thought was an attack on us. We took everything personally because we're talking about the contradictions in this society. And James, who at the time was soul brother #1, he comes out with a song saying, I'm an American too. I like fast cars and continental suits. And I think what James was trying to say, that I'm an American, so treat me fairly. When we heard that song, we said, what is this guy saying? We're talking about how America doesn't treat us fairly. And this guy, soul brother #1, is doing a song talking about I'm an American. I like America. I like continental suits and fast cars. I like America. So there's a New York City Panther Party approached James Brown and really explained to him what our concern was. And James then did a record to repair and he met with Nixon, I believe. And so now he's going to do a record to repair his reputation. And he did I'm Black and I'm Proud. Now we've been saying that for a couple of years, at least a year, but it did not resonate all over the country until James Brown said, with your bad self. Larry Neal had said that was what we were going to have to do. He said that we were going to have to poet the way James Brown sings. And that was before he did that song. And when James did it, then it began to resonate all over the country. It's the power that the music has. People could jump up and start dancing to it. Then everybody, Curtis Mayfield did it. Everybody was doing a song now that
Right.
talked about I'm black and I'm beautiful. The music,
Man.
understand this. Music is the literature of the masses. There are people who don't read, can't read, don't have time to read, don't want to be bothered reading. So we've got some wonderful things that they should know. Like Malcolm was correct. If you want to hide it from a Negro, put it in a book. That was true. Might still be true. People wouldn't bother to read. They didn't read. But the masses of the people listened to the radio. The music was the literature of the masses, and it still is. So when the music was saying, love yourself, respect yourself, when the music was saying, I'm black and I'm proud, when the music was saying all kinds of wonderful things, you must be a special lady, when the music was celebrating the beauty in the black community and in the black family, when brother did a song called Patches, I'm dependent on you, son, to pull the family through. You know, the music was no. Uh, so
We
the
called
people
it message music. That's what we called it,
was
message music.
yeah, but the music has that kind of power, and so what we have to do in order to uh, sabotage the development, the emotional and mental, intellectual development of the people, is we've got to remove the music, and if we can
So
remove the music and
we,
then replace it with what is out there now, then you will have the reality on the street that we currently have. It was a decision made by people who understood how important and powerful music really is and took advantage of that. But
Bob, as we conclude, and it's on literature, what is the name of the book that we can access the Harvard report in? You mentioned again.
it is called the Harvard Report. The
Okay.
Harvard Report, and it's censored by Logan Westbrook.
Okay.
Very small, easy to read. Um, yes, it'd be helpful. Most people, even people that I know in the record industry, never heard of the Harvard Report. Harvard Report strategies swirling all around them, but they never knew that.
My brother, want to thank you very much for your
All right.
time, for your input. There are other aspects to this story that we will explore in the future. And today is August 25, 2020. The Final Call newspaper will be out this week. In addition to that, Gary Null's show for the 23rd, the 24th, and the 25th. Go into the archives of WBAI.org. Gary Null's show from 12 noon to 1. You want to get the 23, the 24, the 25th of August, and access that information that he's giving there. It relates to all of us. Once again, Bob, what is the address of the your store in?
See, it would be really wonderful if some of the Black healers in New York City could get airtime on BAI. If Dr. Kukai could have a show, if Queen Afua could have a show, if Muntu could have a show. That's another struggle we'll come back with a little bit later on. It would be really great. There are people who have already proven how much they love us and how much they are committed to our well-being, but they can't get any airtime on WBAI. Whether or not that is really a community radio station is the real question. Gary
uh,
Null is good. He's not the only healer in this marketplace.
your store,
That
and
Namaskar is at 956 Atlantic Avenue, but you can go online. Just go to Namaskar Health. You Google that, the website will come up, and you can look at the things that we do and the things we have in the store. Namaskar is Namaskar, Hindu greeting, Namaskar. So you know how to spell Namaskar. It's the Hindu greeting. The divinity in me acknowledges the divinity in you.
And that's what we do. Thank you, my brother.
All
God
right,
bless
now,
you.
thank you.
All right, peace. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much for viewing this program and forwarding it on to your friends and relatives, because it all relates to us. The music is the message, and we want to make it a better place to live and to hear music that is uplifting to our minds and spirit. God bless you all. Peace.
And you're listening to 95.9 FM Grand Houses Community Radio and East Harlem Community Radio over the East Harlem Community Radio Network. You just heard a show by Brother Leroy and the Wisdom Table, and we are it's available, and our archives are on YouTube, and you can go to YouTube and just type in Bob Law Live at Grant,
This is
and you'll,
D12. Thank
and
you.
you'll get the show.
Man.
And thank you so much.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant Houses Community Radio, home of the Community News Service and the soul of the Upper West Side.